Welcome to the Friends of Fantasy Benefits Baseball Podcast. I am Justin Mason, joined as always by Dave McDonald. Dave, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, that's me. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, it is me. We didn't get to do this last week because of the holiday, but I had a very nice 4th of July and everything, hanging out with my friends and family, and yeah, it was a really good time. How was your 4th?
My 4th sucked. I'll be real honest. We were supposed to go up to Tahoe, and we had this, cabin for the weekend. We were going to be leaving Thursday and coming back on Tuesday. And Wednesday night at 3:00 in the morning, my daughter woke up with COVID, and that canceled that whole weekend. So. Thankfully, she bounced back very well. By the 4th, she actually even tested negative. Nobody else got it. I was feeling really crappy, but I never tested positive. So I don't know if there's.
You tested and was negative.
Oh, I tested like 10 times and I never tested, even though I felt like I had symptoms. But I ended up was negative. I mean, I tested all the time because I was really worried I was going to get it. Having to go into work and stuff like that, but ended up being fine. Kids are good. So, all is well that ends well. But speaking of ending well, we have a little bit of an announcement, or I have a little bit of an announcement. Figure I'd do it here with my good friend, Dave. Potapalooza, baby. It is returning. We didn't do it at the beginning of the season, or prior to the start of the season with the lockout and everything that was going on. Other events going on prior to the season, I felt like, hey, why don't we try this at the All-Star break? But then COVID hit my family a few times over the last couple months, and it kind of prolonged it. So we are doing Potapalooza July 23rd and 24th. For those who don't know what that is, it is a 2-day live stream. I'm going to live stream for like 8 hours on that Saturday and Sunday. I'm going to be joined by guests of people all around the industry, talking fantasy baseball, getting you ready for the home stretch. We're going to talk about some of that kind of stuff tonight as well. And if you don't like Dave, perfect. Dave's not available that weekend. So I will be getting a whole bunch of people. And it's a way to raise money, right? So we're going to pick a charitable organization. If you have a suggestion, I haven't picked the organization yet. All the money donated goes to that organization. I don't take a dime of it. And you can win prizes, things like bobbleheads, T-shirts, subscriptions to different fantasy sites. I know Pitcher List is going to donate something. We've already got, RotoWare T-shirts and bobbleheads and all sorts of things. Plus, for every $1,000 we raised $8,000 last year. For every $1,000 I raise, I give away a spot in TGFBI for next season. So if you want to get into TGFBI and you have not been able to win your way in and you're not in the industry, donate, because it's all based on raffle, right? For every dollar you donate, you get a lottery or a raffle ticket, and all that money gets donated. You have a chance to win these cool prizes. And like I said, for every $1,000 I raise, I add another spot. So last year we raised $8,000. 8 people got spots into TGFBI this year from last year's Potapalooza. It's a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of information. Everything will be available via podcast and YouTube later on, and you can catch it live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Twitter. So definitely, if you want to donate, you can send any amount of money to my PayPal, justinmasonfantasy@gmail.com, or my Venmo @JustinSalinger. Make sure you send it as a friend and family, so that way I don't have tax on it at the end of the year. That's the big announcement.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay the PayPal fee that you have to pay otherwise if it's not friends and family. Yeah,
exactly. So
I had a few people who paid me for Earth, and I was like, yeah, it only sent me like 90% of it because they take out a fee if you don't put for friends and family. It actually shocks me how many people don't know that you always put friends and family when sending money on PayPal.
Yes.
It's like an official business. I'm not telling people to dodge the IRS, but this is not that kind of.
It used to be like you didn't get taxed on that, but now if it's not done as friends and family, it's done as it's considered income. You get taxed in the year, and the last thing I want to do is get taxed $1,000 or something like that because of PayPal transactions for a charity event. Yes.
I am really bummed to miss this year. I had a blast last year. It's a great cause. I really wish I could make it, but like you said, it's a good opportunity for those of you out there who are not a big fan of me to come and hang out. And hopefully we can get Jake and Tony there too. So Rotosaurus can still represent, and I'm sure we can talk to Jake and get some merch donated because we do have the coolest logo in the land. So
absolutely,
so that donated. And I was thinking you could even do your barf charity. I don't know what that is because you sure as hell ain't winning Earth. So I mean, you might as well, do that for your Potapalooza charity.
Well played. Typically, I like to take a kind of a suggestion from the crowd. I also like to donate to smaller charities. So for like TGFBI last year, we donated to like an after-school program in Milwaukee that someone had suggested. I looked into it, looked cool, and I'd rather donate if I'm donating a few $1,000s, donate to someplace that's actually like a few $1,000s means a lot as opposed to that's what they used to buy pencils this year. So if you have an idea for the charity, please send it along. But otherwise, donate. JustinMasonFantasy@gmail.com is the PayPal. @Justin Salinger is the Venmo. And come watch and support some of the people that have already signed up. I just sent out the sign up information last night, so still getting them. Brad Johnson from NBC Sports Edge, Ryan Hallam from Fantasyland, Nick Pollock from Pitcherless going to come on talk some pitching. Our good buddy Michael Simeone probably going to come on talk some pitching as well. B. Don from Razzball, Eric Cross going to come on probably talk some prospects with him. Marty Tallman of Triple Play, Scott Engel, Eric Smolsky, friend of the podcast.
Yes,
Scott Engel, Friends of Fantasy Benefits own Daniel Rotter, Patrick Davitt from Baseball HQ, Ryan Bloomfield from Baseball HQ, Ryan Owen, who was just on the pod the other day, right? Our good friend and friend of the podcast, Batflip Crazy, as well as Mike Carter is going to come on. Scott Chu, like Greg Jewett, who's been on the pod a number of times. Corbin Young, who's been on the pod. It's going to be a blast.
All-star.
Yeah. And I mean, and I know I'm going to try to guilt Jason Collette's already said he would come on. I know I'll guilt Paul Sporer to come on, as well as probably Saras and some other good friends in the industry. So come by the 23rd, 24th. It will be live streamed. You can catch the replays over on YouTube or in podcast form. I think probably on the TGFBI feed. So definitely come support that. Donate his money and win some cool prizes. Right, get in TGFBI, win some cool stuff. It's going to be a blast. So Potapalooza 2022. You thought it wasn't going to happen, but it is happening this year. Let's move on away from that and talk some fantasy baseball. And we're going to hit some news and notes first, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how we evaluate our teams heading into the break, some hot hitters heading into the break. And then we're going to have a discussion about the number one overall pick in 2022, because you, sir, 2023, sorry. You, sir, started a kerfuffle on the Twitter machine, as you always do. And we need to discuss that because I don't think you were out of pocket necessarily. I don't know. I don't know that I agree with you, but I don't think you were out of pocket.
No, it's fine if you disagree with me. That's the whole point of this, right? Like, what use is having this great community on Twitter if you're not gonna like discuss these kind of things with other intelligent people in the community? Like, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking right now, and I'm always open. I'm open to hearing what other people have to say, and if you say something that changes my mind, then I did come a little bit towards the other way, which we'll discuss more later, but I'm still kind of thinking what I was previously thinking still, but we'll get into that. But it's nice that these, even though it starts a kerfuffle, it gets people talking and people make a lot of really good points, and that's what helps you grow as a player, is having those conversations and just keeping it real friendly. You don't have to get upset just because someone has a different opinion than you. It's totally fine to have difference of opinions, especially with other really good, really smart players in the industry.
And there were some really good, smart players in the industry who were part of that discussion.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but let's start with Wander Franco. He has a broken hamate bone. He is expected to miss 5 to 8 weeks. This is super disappointing. I wasn't in on Wander Franco. I'm not necessarily victory lapping because of the injury, but the season has not turned out the way people had expected when they drafted him. Is he a drop at this point? I mean, if he's going to miss 5 to 8 weeks, we're talking about at minimum he's out till mid-August and likely out until September.
Yeah, in most, obviously if you have IL slots, that's different, but we're talking about like 15-team league, short bench, like seven-man benches. In most scenarios, you're going to drop him. I mean, there might be a situation where you don't drop him if you have a really healthy, deep team and feel like you can afford to stash him that whole time. But he also wasn't exactly lighting it up before he went down. I mean, I know that he's a big name, but, it's like you look at what he actually done this year. 5 homers, 5 steals, and 250 plate appearances with a 260 average. I just feel like you're going to get more value out of that spot by rotating it out to someone to help you players and taking shots on guys who can actually help you before then. And you never know, like he might not come back at all. He might be back, mid-September. And then he's like, how much help is he compared to any other guy who's out there at that point?
Yeah. And I mean, the problem with hamate injuries is they tend to sap power. And this wasn't a guy who was giving you a ton of power to begin with. So if it's sapping some of his power, does that hurt his batting average, which is what he really is useful for at this point, right? Like he wasn't stealing a ton of bases, wasn't going to for a ton of power. He was a really good batting average guy. But that's
260 and 250 plate appearances. I mean, it's a small sample-ish, but I don't know.
It was very disjointed, like, right? I mean, he missed because we have to remember, like, he just come back from injury. Like he missed a lot of time. I think he's droppable in just about every format where you can't easily reserve him. So, not everybody plays NFBC, right? So most people have IL spots. But if you've got other guys that need to go on the IL, I think I'd rather put just about anybody else on there because chances are he might hit another 2 home runs this year. Like how valuable is a guy who comes back in September and hits 2 home runs and, bats 290? Like it's not as big of a difference maker because he's not able to kind of, volume all those plate appearances to make that batting average really impactful on your team. So,
yeah. And that's the thing, like when you're talking about over a small sample, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that, batting average, like your historical batting average means absolutely nothing. Like it's really, like in that short period, you're looking for hot hitters. You're looking for guys who are hitting the ball well at that time. Those are the players who are going to give you good average. It's like averages out over time if you give him 500 plate appearances, but he's going to come back for maybe 50, something like that, where it's not necessarily going to be 50 plate appearances with a 300 plus average. Like he's going to be cold coming in off an injury. You're much better off just playing guys who are currently hitting the ball hard at that point in time.
Where do you think he goes next year in drafts? He was about a 4th round pick this year.
Yeah. Well, he's still a combo guy, like he's still got some speed and some power with good average. He doesn't really hurt you in any category. I mean, at least that's what his profile is if he performs that way. So I don't think he falls super low. If he was going in the 4th this year, and I feel like I saw him go higher than that in several drafts, but I'm going to say he's probably like I don't think he escapes like the 6th round.
Would you be in on that price?
It depends on a number of things. I wouldn't necessarily be out. Like I'm always looking for those kind of guys at that point in the draft. Like early on, I'm getting my studs and everything, and I'm making sure I get my closers. And I'm getting an ace. And then after that point, I am looking for guys who are going to help me in all 5 categories pretty much. And it's that, and it's those upside starters who can become an ace, like your Dylan Ceases and your McClanahans from this year. Those are guys I invested in a lot. So yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that I would be interested in him at that price.
I think I would be too. As much as I kind of faded him at this year's price, I think if he does fall into that 5th, 6th, 7th round, He's like the perfect, guy that, like you said, contributes in all 5 categories. And maybe, the lack of plate appearances, the lack of production this year kind of tampers down that price. I don't know. I mean, he's such an uber prospect that they're going to be, we saw it with Vlad, right? Vlad Jr. before the breakout, right? People were still taking him super high, even though he hadn't really done anything to kind of, cement it coming into last season. Bryan Reynolds hits the IL. This is a huge bummer for both of us. We're both highly invested. It hurts me because I did not see this news before lineups locked. I saw it about 5 minutes after lineups locked. So I'm stuck with him for the next 4 days. It is a side issue. It doesn't sound like it's overly serious. It sounds more like it is kind of being protective with the All-Star break coming. But oblique injuries typically take 4 to 6 weeks. How worried are you about Bryan Reynolds?
Yeah, I'm worried for a number of reasons. I mean, you said I'm invested. To give you an idea of how invested I am, he's on 7 out of my 10 NFBC teams. And then he's also on a few of my Yahoo teams and one of my Fantrax teams. So there's no player that I'm more invested in this year than Bryan Reynolds. So I'm worried. Every time I see side injury, I think it's an oblique. I hope this is just precautionary. I don't know. I don't know that they know yet either. Like they maybe hope that they stopped it in time. I don't know that that's possible. I don't know. But like you said, it could be a month. He could end up not getting traded then. I mean, then he has to finish the season.
They said today it's very unlikely he or Bednar gets traded.
Yeah, I see that. But what else is a team going to say, right? Like they want to keep their value of their players high. So they're not going to say like, oh, yeah, we're trying to get rid of him, So I don't know that means anything. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm expecting him to get traded. But I think the odds of him getting traded are about the same as I always thought they were, which were, I don't know, maybe somewhere in the 25 to 35% range.
Yeah, I think it's lower than that. I mean, I think this is a team on the rise. They've got a lot of interesting pieces starting to come up to the major leagues. They could even, be making a run at free agents here in the near future because they've got such great cost control talent. I don't know why you move a guy like Bryan Reynolds unless you get just absolutely wowed.
Yeah.
Bednar, I'm totally fine moving. They should be moving Bednar.
I mean, he's got a lot of years of control left. I think they're willing to.
But relievers, man, you know how volatile they are.
Hey, I get it. I definitely think the Pirates are that team who are more willing than most to trade guys like that in that situation. But it's going to take a package. It's going to have to be a monster package for Reynolds, and it's going to have to be still a very large package for Bednar too. So teams going to have to pay up. We'll have to see what the market looks like.
Yeah. Whit Merrifield hits the IL after playing 553 consecutive games.
How crazy is that?
It's super crazy for this day and age. Also, one of the records in sports that are never going to be broken. Cal Ripken's record never going to be broken. No,
not in modern times. Like it just, I mean, it's the same thing with like those pitchers used to throw like 300 innings. Like we know better than to even try that anymore. Like we know that long term, that's just not a good idea.
There may never be another pitcher who gets 300 wins.
That's very possible. Yeah.
I mean, you got to think in order to get 300 wins, you have to win 15 games for 20 straight seasons.
That's crazy.
Like it's just never going to happen again.
I mean, Bartolo Colon was like the best shot at that because he was pitched till he's like 43.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it for Whit Merrifield, that's like 3.5 seasons of games that he played consecutively, which is crazy. I mean, that's a huge part of his value, like that you were drafting him because you're like, well, this guy gets 700 plate appearances not only does he play every game, but he leads off every game pretty much. So, yeah, I think, as guys get older though, father time comes for us all. And I think it finally caught up with him, unfortunately.
Who do you think is the active wins leader right now in Major League Baseball?
I mean, I'm so bad at this stuff. I mean, Verlander played on Detroit.
It's Verlander.
Teams. It is Verlander. Okay.
It is Verlander. He is 39. He has 237 wins.
Yeah. I mean, hey, at this rate, he might get there, but I doubt it.
He'd have to play another like 4 seasons.
Right.
He could. I mean, theoretically.
He's still, I mean, just to spite me, I feel like, but he's still producing at a very high level. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've already taken my L on Verlander for the year.
Yeah,
Zach Greinke is the only other guy who's over 200 wins. Max Scherzer will get there this year.
Okay. Yeah, Scherzer is also doing really well. I will say this: Verlander is not the same pitcher, but he has adapted. I mean, his K rate is way down from his prime. I mean, he's not even at 9K per nine anymore. So I don't think he's necessarily like an ace, but you got to respect the guy. It's still putting up a 2 ERA with a .87 WHIP, even if it's a 3.44 Sierra. I mean, I do think regression's coming for him to some degree in the second half, but I mean, hey, the guy has still been a phenomenal pick this year.
Absolutely. Are you doing? You're holding on to Merrifield, right? Like it just. I know that like it's.
I don't own any, so I didn't even see what the injury was. Honestly,
it's a sore toe.
Oh yeah, I mean,
he was getting an MRI today. I have not seen results yet. Okay. I mean, you got to just hold on to him. I think unless we find out he's going to get surgeries out for the year or something like that. Right. I think you just got to hold on to him. Esteury Ruiz was added to the practice squad earlier today. There was a report. There were multiple reports out there that he was making his debut tonight. That those turned out to be incorrect. But is it time to pick up Ruiz, who, for those who don't know, has been out on absolute fire in AAA, stealing every base. They cannot afford to have these teams continue to play with the amount of bases he's stolen. He
has 60 steals this year between AA and AAA.
Insanity.
Unreal. So, I mean, and he's hitting like somewhere in the vicinity of 330 this year too, with 13 homers as well. I mean, I never heard of this guy before this year, but I'm not a huge prospect guy. But yeah, I mean, this guy has like this reminds me of when Adalberto Mondesi first came up, and he went on that month and a half tear that led Lindy from being in like 8th place in my league to passing me on like the last day to win a league against me. And I was just so distraught. But you know, those guys who can have that kind of impact, like if he can run that much, it could be like a Berti situation. Like, I mean, if you need steals, and maybe even if you don't, to prevent your league mates from picking him up. If you're in a league that you can pick him up in, I would, because I have no idea. I have no idea what the timetable is. When they're going to bring him up, it might not be till September, might be next week, might be tomorrow. I have no idea, but that kind of impact, it does not come along often.
I mean, I think a legit shot he's up here in the next few days, honestly. I mean, they've already, like I said, added him to the Taxi squad. So he would be the first one called upon. I mean, they're already missing Tatis. They're now missing Profar. Kim's been banged up. Like, I think he could be and you're right. Like, he is legit, has like league changing potential because of his stolen base prowess. Not to mention, he's a pretty darn good hitter just in his own right. Right. Not much power to speak of, but over the last month,
he's not a John Berti. He's not like an empty, steals guy either, which is good.
He's got a little bit of pop, but like not much. Like I mean, a lot of the pop that you've seen in the minor leagues is because of the parks they play in the Pacific Coast League. So, but over the last month in AAA, he has stolen 21 bases with a 305 batting average. Like he legit could come up and steal 20 rest of the way, not like 20 for a season, 20 rest of the way.
And he doesn't out a lot. And that's the biggest thing for leaguers. His K rate is under 18%, which is excellent. Yeah.
So far over this last month, he's posted a 16% strikeout rate. That's 20 strikeouts in over 120 plate appearances. He's just been, I mean, like I said, I already picked him up in Tout Wars. I've been stashing him for the last 2 weeks. With the hope that he is going to be up here in the near future, and I can throw him into my lineup. So, I think, if you are in a league where you can pick up minor leaguers and stash them, he's a guy you need to be stashing right now. Nathan Eovaldi is set to return this weekend. He's going up against the Yankees, though. Would you throw him back into your lineup?
No. I mean, I love Eovaldi, but not only do I not like starting guys coming off of injuries, especially multi-week injuries, but now you're talking about him coming back against the best offense in baseball in the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. No, I tried to do everything I could on the teams that I had him to have another option to put in for him because I just do not trust that at all.
Yeah, I like Eovaldi too, but I'm not starting him at all in any league right now. Not against the Yankees. You have no idea how many innings they're even going to let him go. It's just not worth the headache, especially right before the break. They're probably going to play it a little bit carefully. So, it's nice to see him back though. It's good that guy with his health track record. It's great to see him back on the mound. Speaking of health, Kenley Jansen is nearing a return on Wednesday, or a potential return Wednesday. Did you throw him back into your lineups? Because there were some smart people in the fantasy baseball world that were questioning whether or not they should do it.
Yeah, and I was one of them. I don't know about smart, but I was one of the people who was tweeting earlier about Kenley Jansen. Just warning people, you have to read actually what they're saying. So they're not saying he's definitely back, Tuesday. They said they hope he's back Tuesday. He threw a bullpen today, and he's going to see how he feels. And then they were saying they might activate him for Wednesday's game. But there's so many things that could go wrong. I mean, he could not be, the bullpen might not go well. They might decide, okay, that was all right, but we want to see more. He might not have his mechanics going right. The velo might not be there. There's so many things that could go wrong here that unless you are desperate for saves, so I did activate him in one league because it was a league that I'm going for an overall in where I had no other closers, and every single save is very important to me. So that was the only league that I left him in for. Every other league I benched him for other options because you just don't know. You might get a half a week from him. You might get nothing from him this week. So, or he could return and he could be really bad. So I just think you're going to be much safer waiting until after the All-Star break to get him back.
Yeah, I mean, even if he comes back, it doesn't mean he's going to be pitching in the ninth. Like, they could easily say, hey, we're going to throw you in some low-leverage situations just to ease you back in.
I hear that. I don't know that they're going to – I feel like they will put him right back in the ninth.
They could.
I think with some guys you would have that approach. With guys like him, I think if they're bringing him back, they're bringing him back to play him in the ninth. That's just what I think.
I mean, this is a big series against the Mets, so I'm sure they would like him to be there for them. But, yeah, I wouldn't have done it. I don't have him anywhere. I did pick up Will Smith and Minter in a few places, and I did play them this week just, on the hope that I get a save or two. But, it's a crapshoot. You just never really know in these kind of situations. Let's talk about evaluating your team at the break. We're coming to the halfway point of the season. Here is the time in which teams in your league will start to transition to football and start to not pay attention to all of their teams that they're playing because their teams might not be so good. And so often I think people give up. They go, oh, my team's in 12th place. My team's in 9th place. I'm not going to win. I'm not going to catch. I'm going to give up. And that is the worst thing you can do. It's happened to me. My first year in NFBC, I was playing in a DC. It was my only league in NFBC. And I was in like 8th or 9th place about this time. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm not even going to pay attention. And I ended up going back and checking that team in August. And I had moved up to 5th, even though I hadn't been setting my lineup. And I ended up like finishing in 3rd place and cashing, right? Getting my money back. And I went, you know what? If I just played that out, I probably would have won the effing league. Or
you would have fucked it up worse because then
maybe
so bad that you gained points by just not screwing it up.
Yeah, potentially. But ever since then, like, I don't give up on teams. Are you play in a lot of leagues, not as many leagues as like me or Zach Waxman, but do you ever find yourself just giving up on leagues because you're struggling?
No, never give up on leagues. And I mean, granted, I haven't been in a position where I'm so low that I don't have a shot to still win the league at this point in a long time. It's been thankfully many years. I don't have those all or nothing kind of teams. Like I build very balanced teams that I'm probably not going to blow people away, but I'm always going to be in the hunt. And and in most of my leagues right now, I'm in the top 4 or 5. And that's fine. Like you're in a position where you can still, a hot streak gets you into first place still. I've learned over the years, I've been doing this a long time at the high stakes level, you just do not ever give up. I have seen comebacks of 40 points in the span of a month. Like people can get hot. And if the people ahead of you, if it's a fab league and they use all their fab, you can move way ahead of them in a couple weeks even, because they're going to be taking zeros. You're going to be picking up guys that are playing every day. You just have to make sure you hold on to some fab. That is the key in fab leagues. You cannot spend it all. You can't say, well, I'm just going to throw all my money at this guy and hope that he carries me. I don't care who that player is, Esteury Ruiz or anybody else who comes up. No one player is worth using the rest of your fab on. Always, always, always hold on to some money for the end. So
how much do you want to hold on to? Because I usually like to have like $50 to $75 heading into the last month of the season.
Yeah, I mean it depends on your league. Some leagues, that's you're like a rich man in some leagues, and keep in mind you're not competing with everybody by that point, because a lot of people are going to have moved on to football or are going to have given up on their 13th place team or whatever, where they're not going to be bidding against you. Some people do, and that's their prerogative too. I see people get big.
Yeah, there was a big discussion about this a week ago.
Bobby Big Bucks, who's Bob Cramatola, big high stakes player. I guess
who was at the time winning the main event overall, and apparently in a different league where he was in last place, he made some bids, and someone in his league got pissed off because they got outbid by him. Like, well, you're in last place, you shouldn't be bidding. Like, fuck you. I'm done. It's my team.
These are the same people that get upset at teams that are up 10 runs for continuing to try to score more runs. Like, no, the point of the game is to keep scoring runs. Like, the game isn't over. I've seen comebacks of 15 runs before, and I don't care what's been done before. Keep playing. Like, we're not little league. We don't need to worry about people's feelings. If you don't want people to score on you, then make them stop scoring on you. Like, that's on you. And it's the same thing in fantasy baseball. You paid whatever, $1,500, or it could be a free league, whatever. You paid your entry to get into that league. It's your team. You want to play as well as you can to get as high as you can. Even if you're only going to get up to like 7th place, hey, that looks a lot better on your stat sheet than a 15th place finish. And
absolutely,
you don't even have to. You don't have to give your reasoning. You should always be trying. And people anybody who tells you otherwise is flat wrong. Like, this is not an opinion thing. It's your team. You should be trying the entire season. And I never give up. So I've seen so many comebacks. I've been the one making comebacks on people. I've had people make comebacks on me. I've seen so many things that you would not believe. You can always have faith in winning your league still. I don't care where you are right now.
One of the first times I ever had Rob Silver on a podcast, he talked about how his team that won the main event overall in 2015 was in last place in June in his league.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a ton of movement. I in my main event, in one of my main event leagues, I was in first place 2 days ago. I'm in 4th right now. There's still a ton of movement that can be made in every. Do not give up. Just keep it going. So, like, when do you decide though to punt on an overall? Because there's a difference between trying to win your league and trying to win an overall, and it can become apparent, at some point that you go, hey, this team, I still think it can cash or it can win, but playing for the overall is silly. Maybe I need to kind of readjust my thought process.
Yeah, and usually it's something like where there's a one-off category like that's not related to other categories like steals or saves. Because obviously home runs are related to your run and RBI production, stuff like that. But if you're way behind in steals, and like if you were to make up a 20 steal difference, it would only move you up 1 or 2 categories. It's not really worth going for at that point. Like, put all of your efforts into increasing your other offensive categories. And same thing with saves. Like if you're sitting here with like 6 saves right now and you're like 20 behind the guy like 2 or 3 ahead of you, you know, you have to look at the points. Like, am I gaining? Where can I gain the most points here? Am I focusing on the right categories and all that stuff? Now, in an overall competition, if you're going for the overall, you have to go for every single category. But, you know, shit happens, and sometimes you have to come to that decision where, okay, I can't win this anymore. But like you said, you can still cash in your league. So, yeah, you should be looking at that right now and evaluating where's my most movement in every league that I'm in. Where can I move up the most? What's not worth going for anymore? Maybe you dump a guy like you've got Miles Straw. He's your only steals guy, and you're struggling in steals or something like that. Dump him, pick up a power hitter, and go for those other categories. You're going to move up a lot more than you would just by keep trying to do every category.
If you don't already do this, I highly recommend taking your league standings, putting them in a spreadsheet, and figuring out where you can gain the most points and where you can lose the most points. Don't forget where you can lose points, because just because you're gaining points, you know, one category doesn't mean you're not going to lose potentially points in others. And really figure out, okay, here's where I am most likely to gain points in the standings, and here's where I need to protect myself so I don't lose points in the standings at the same time. And really focus on that. If you're deciding, you know, like, obviously in my second main event, I'm not going to win the overall. I'm likely not going to even cash. But I'm going to figure out right now, like, how I can gain as many standing points as possible to try to put myself in a position to cash. Screw the overall. Screw keeping balanced in that league. I'm going to continue. I'm going to try to grind my way up towards a little bit of money to kind of try to salvage that. You know, whereas in my other main event league, I'm not ready to do that yet. Like, I'm still staying balanced. I'm still, you know, I still think that's a team that, you know, gets hot at the right time, could do some real damage. So, you know, just take every single one of your leagues, put it in a spreadsheet, and start figuring it out. Hey, this is where I need to, you know, what I need to do to kind of gain these points, and then start making moves. Start using your fab smartly and working towards your upward mobility.
Absolutely. Good points.
And we already talked about punting categories. You know, at this point, if, like Dave said, if you are, I did this last year in a main event and it almost got me into the money in that league. About this time, I went, okay, I can only catch one other person in stolen bases. And why am I rostering Miles Straw? Like, I was in last place, and he wasn't helping me in anything but stolen bases. So I went, you know what? I'm going to let someone else spend a bunch of money on fab on him, because people were going to, because he was stealing a crap ton of bases. And I'm just going to punt stolen bases and hope that I can power my way literally into the money. And it almost worked. So, you know, it's totally fine to punt categories. I prefer not to punt multiple categories. So those things are connected, like Dave was just talking about: home runs and stolen bases, wins and strikeouts, things like that. I'd rather not punt that. But, you know, at batting average, stolen bases, and saves, like, if you can't catch other people, just saves, like, yeah, saves do come in the league. But is there a guy who's going to come in the league right now and get you 15 to 20 saves the rest of the way? Probably not. Even in your 10s and 12s, like, there aren't that many guys that are going to come in and like be a huge difference maker where you can catch someone who's, you know, 20 saves ahead of you.
Well, there is a time coming up right now with the trade deadline where if you can figure out which teams are likely to move their closers and you can figure out who's next in line, this is an opportunity for you to gain in saves. But if you have like single-digit saves right now, or you're 20 plus saves behind, gaining a couple points, like, it's just not worth doing that at this point, because you're going to lose more in wins and Ks than you're going to gain in saves at that point. But if you're somewhere in the middle or lower middle where you can move up a lot with 10 or 15 saves, you're going to have some opportunities here, because some closers are probably going to be on the move come the trade deadline.
Here's the problem with that, though. And normally I would agree with you, but I looked at this at Fab this last week. Like, I went and I kind of took a look and I went, okay, who are the guys that I could try to pick up right now that might move into a closing situation on some of these rebuilding teams. The problem is with the extra playoff spot in each league, I think there'd be less teams selling. And the teams that are selling aren't really good at all. Like
I will say this though, some of those teams, take a team like Baltimore, right? Like they can make the playoffs, but they can trade their closer, they can trade Jorge Lopez and not be giving up on the season by doing that. You know what I mean? Like they can cash in on a guy.
Yeah, but how many saves are you going to get from Baltimore rest of the way?
Well, okay, this
is part of my argument.
Well, they're a decent team, right? I mean, like how many saves does he have right now? I mean, it's not like we're talking about, the Pirates last year or something.
11? I don't know. I'm guessing. I can find out pretty quick.
No, more 16. Jorge Lopez is 16 saves.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Who would be your guy? Do you think it's?
I think it's Felix Bautista.
You think it's Bautista? You don't think it's Dylan Tate?
No, I don't think it's Dylan Tate. Bautista actually had a shot at it after Lopez blew a couple in a row, and then he blew it. But I still think that they'd go back to him. I mean, he's pitching really well. He's got a 1.77 ERA, 101 WHIP. Although his SIERA is 282, but that's still really good. He gets a lot of strikeouts, and his walk rate is not prohibitive. It's 3.3 walks per 9. So, I think that Bautista is a guy that he's someone who, if I'm looking to stash someone, he's at the top of the list. Obviously, the Cubs are going to move Robertson. The problem is figuring out, because I think that Givens is just as likely to get moved, if not more likely.
Yeah, because Givens is a free agent at the end of the year. I think Chris Martin's the guy.
I think Chris Martin's the guy too, but they might not. They might move him too. That's the thing. I mean, so then it could be Scott Efros. So I don't know. There's some. It's interesting there. I think if you roster,
you could be closing for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're not that far away. They call you up to the majors. They got no one else. So, yeah, I think Chris Martin's the guy. We'll talk more about this next week because we're going to talk about a bunch of guys who could potentially get moved at the deadline and how that affects their team. Let's talk about some hot hitters heading into the break. Carlos Santana, he was traded. Speaking of traded, he was traded over to the Mariners, and he is starting to get hot. Hit 2 home runs yesterday. It's time to pick up Carlos Santana, or is this just a little hot stretch we don't care about?
I mean, I think he had just been so bad before this that there's just some regression the other way coming. I mean, this is a guy who he hits the ball hard. He doesn't strike out a lot. He walks a lot, but I think he's too patient. Like I don't think he swings enough. I mean, he's got the tools. I just think he doesn't swing enough. That's really what it comes down to. So, I don't know. I think he's in a better hitting environment now. He's not in Kauffman Stadium anymore. Better lineup. But I don't know that he can. I don't know that they had him in mind to keep playing. Like once guys come back, I don't know if he's going to keep up the playing time. Because they got Haniger coming back at some point fairly soon, next couple weeks maybe. Maybe
you never really know with him.
That's fair. But Winker's suspended currently, but you're going to get him back. You're going to get Haniger back, Kyle Lewis back. So with all those guys coming back, I just don't know that Santana continues to play is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think Haniger coming back, Kyle Lewis coming back. I think once those guys come back, they'll move Ty France over to first, and he's just going to be maybe a short side platoon kind of guy.
Exactly. I mean, I think he was there to plug a gap, and I think he's doing just that. Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. What about Matt Carpenter? Matt Carpenter was cut by the Rangers, and the Yankees picked him up. He's been kind of, just a fill-in guy, right? Short side platoon, filling in, giving guys days off. But when he is on the field, he is murdering the baseball. Should we be picking up Matt Carpenter?
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy that I was super interested in as a late pick this year. I drafted him in several places. And then, with was it St. Louis or Texas that he started with? I can't
Texas.
Texas, yeah. And then he didn't really get a shot. They let him go. And then, the Yankees picked him up and they would play him every so often. And it was like, okay. And then when he played, he would hit homers and it was like, but then when he actually started to get like a couple of games and it was like, I'm kind of mad at myself for not picking him up earlier for like $1 or $2 because, you see a guy start breaking out. It's only a matter of time before they give him more playing time, even in a place like that, because they've got a lot of guys who are very injury prone in New York. So I should have known that opportunity was going to come to him. I think you have to. I mean, the guy is just pulling everything. I mean, he's pulling at a 58% rate, and in Yankee Stadium, that plays. So, his max EV is only, sub 108. It's nothing special. He's making good contact though. 80% contact rate, 85% zone contact rate. 40% hard hit rate. He's hitting over his head. There's no way around it. But like, he's not a 344 hitter. Sorry guys, in case you were fooled by that. But can he hit 250 with a bunch of power? Yeah, he can. He's probably still going to only play against righties, but I think he's valuable enough that pretty much anytime they're facing a couple of righties in any half of a week, you got to have him in there.
Yeah, he's just such a hard guy to roster. Because you just, especially in weekly formats.
In weekly formats, it's tougher because he's probably facing righties. But in NFBC, where you've got the bi-weekly
or in daily moves, daily moves lineup in NFBC makes a little bit of sense. It's still difficult because you could be putting him in there, and he only ends up playing 2 out of the 4 games at the beginning of the week. It just.
He could homer in both of those games.
He could, and he has been. He's been unreal. Back from the dead, Matt Carpenter has been. But I'm just not super interested in a guy who is super old, has a really hard path to playing time, on a team that may add more players. This is the Yankees, who are the best team in baseball. Trade deadline's coming up. They may, I think they'll probably add to the bullpen if they add, but this is a team that easily could add, some major pieces that completely block him off. I'll pass. But what about his teammate Aaron Hicks, who's starting to get going? There has been talk that one of the places the Yankees could add is at center field, so his job could be even in jeopardy. Are you adding Aaron Hicks?
Ooh, I didn't know that. Because I actually just picked him up in one of my big money leagues where I need speed, and he's got 9 or 10 steals right now. So I think he's just having a hot streak in terms of the power. I don't think he's anything special as a hitter, but as a guy who can do both, steal bases and hit homers in a really good lineup and playing most days, I'm very interested in Hicks right now. I mean, it could be just a temporary hot streak that you end up dropping him a couple weeks from now. I mean, of course, you've got the All-Star break now, so whatever heat he had going on right now could end up just fading away after the break. I see that happen a lot, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen for my sake. But I'm interested in adding him. Even in some shallower leagues, I think right now you just want to play guys who have the skill set and are hot right now. And I just want to emphasize too with Carpenter, I am going to just say I do think, despite what just to take the other side, I do think he's actually a guy who could be a really valuable pickup for the second half. I hear what you're saying, but I have a strong feeling about him. We'll see.
All right. Hicks has been hot really just in the month of July, hitting 385s, 2 stolen bases, 3 home runs over the course of this month. That's kind of towards the middle, back end of the lineup for the Yankees. But I want a piece of that Yankees lineup. I mean, the Yankees lineup is just so good. Even a piece like batting 6th or 7th, like he normally does, has a ton of value. Hicks is one of those guys that's super frustrating because if not for injuries, his career might have turned out a completely different way. People kind of forget, he was Byron Buxton before Byron Buxton. He was the number 1 overall prospect playing for the Twins when he was coming up from the minor leagues. That being said, this is just a hot streak that I'm riding for right now, and in the hopes that it continues. But he is a long blade of grass away from getting hurt again. So, again, the Yankees could easily make a move Like this was, this is one of the spots in that lineup where they can actually try to make a real upgrade if they wanted to. So,
hopefully not.
Yeah, hope for your sake, hopefully not, and for a few of my DC teams, hopefully not.
Yeah.
Gavin Sheets has been on a roll recently. Hit another home run yesterday. Is this a guy you're buying right now?
He is what he is. He's a very streaky, power only guy. He's not gonna crush you in average, but he's probably like a 250 hitter. He's a guy who plays versus righties though, and I think they had 8 games this week, and I think 7 or 8 of them were against righties. So he's a guy who I definitely was interested to pick up to play this week, but not as like a long-term must-hold guy necessarily. His playing time is often sporadic. The White Sox kind of jerk some guys around, but I think he was a good play for this week. And I think when they face a bunch of righties, or even in a half week, you can throw him in there. So if you've got a deep enough team, you can afford to hold him on your bench and just play him against those righties. Then I think he's fine. That's all he is, though. He's just that guy that you're gonna stream occasionally here and there.
I'm right there with you. This is just a hot streak. Like the underlying numbers are not good even during like these like this really, really nice period. Like he's got a sub 80% zone contact percentage. He's just, when he does make contact, it's going far because he swings with such power. But he's going to go back to being like the 230, 240 hitter he's always been. It's just some good matchups. He's taking advantage. Great. Ride it right while it's hot for right now, and then drop him for the next guy.
Hold on. What do you think the difference in his weighted runs created plus between hitting versus righties versus lefties is? Like the difference between the two? Like how much?
Oh, the difference, 50 points.
122 points.
for reference, 100 is an average player. So we're talking about he has 22% above average difference between his split. That's fucking crazy.
127 versus righties, 5 versus lefties.
Okay, so he's just atrocious versus lefties.
It's pretty good versus righties. I mean, that's
27% above average. So I mean that's he's an above average player, but he should just not go against lefties ever. Alec Bohm was on this list. He left today with a dislocated finger. And he was also going to miss 2 games because of the upcoming Toronto series. So we're just going to skip over this one and hope that he gets better and that this dislocated finger doesn't derail him. But the hot streak is officially over because he's going to be missing some time with that dislocated finger. He was in some serious pain walking off the field. So what about Jonathan Schoop, though? There's always a scopening, as we call it. It happens multiple times throughout the season where Jonathan Schoop gets hot. It's been a weird one, though. He's in like 380 something with like 4 stolen bases. Like stolen bases coming out of nowhere. Still not hitting for much power. Time to buy in on Jonathan Schoop?
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea where the Steelers are coming from. My only guess for that is like sometimes when guys aren't producing, they try to produce in other ways, and maybe he was just like, you know what, I'm gonna turn on the burners. I can't hit it out of the park right now. So I mean, I think he's just gotten pretty unlucky so far this year. Like he's hitting 212, but his expected average is like 258, which is right in line with his like career average, which is 258. Schoop is such like a consistent hitter. Like you can always count on him for like low 20s homers and like a 260-ish average. Like that's who Schoop is. I think you could see a bit of a rebound here in the second half. I mean, it's a crappy team. It's a crappy park, but they've been starting to play a little bit better lately. But, you know, when you're looking at his numbers, when everything else kind of falls in line, you look at what stands out to you. And to me, it's the home runs per fly ball. Like he's still hitting fly balls. The max EV isn't there. Like he normally has a higher max EV, but he's only at 111.6. But that's still enough to get the ball out. But his home run per fly ball rate is only 7.4%, which is about half of what it usually is. So I think you're going to see some more power coming. I think the average is going to continue to rebound a bit as he regresses towards his mean. I think it's a good time to have Schoop in there. I'm not expecting anything monumental, but I think he's going to have a nice second half.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Like This is a guy that I actually said like I was fine dropping earlier this season because he was struggling so bad, and I was worried that he was a guy that was going to lose a lot when they changed, with the ball that they started with this season. Balls weren't flying as much, and guys like him who don't have like prodigious power were really, really struggling. That being said, like he's not this bad. Like and this hot streak is just kind of evening out a little bit of kind of the bad luck earlier on in the season. He's actually got a career high in zone contact at 88% right now. It's not something you expect from a guy who is known for power the way he is. I think he is kind of a buy low right now. I tried to pick him up in a few leagues where he's dropped. I traded for him in a league. I think now's the time to go out and pick up Jonathan Schoop if he's sitting there on the wire. Plus, I love the guys who are first base and second base eligible. Guys who can move between middle and corner just have so much value to me.
Yeah.
Let's finish out with Wilmer Flores. Hit 2 home runs yesterday. Is playing quite a bit right now because the Giants are missing both Tommy LaStella and Evan Longoria. Is it time to pick up Wilmer Flores?
God, I mean, it's the fucking Giants. I never know what to do with Giants hitters. I mean, their playing time's just all over the place. I do like Wilmer Flores. I just don't think you can. I mean, I'm looking at his lineup tracker. Like, he had a stretch where he played about 10 games in a row. But other than that, he never played really more than like 4 games in a row. And sometimes it's like he sits versus a lot of lefties, it looks like.
Which is weird because he was a platoon guy. He's actually been much better against right-handers this year.
That was my bad. I was looking at Jock Peterson there. But he doesn't sit versus he actually plays versus all lefties. But he does sit versus some righties. And I guess the thing is, like, do we still think he's like, as Belt gets more playing time, as Longoria comes back, when Stella comes back, they've got David VR up. He might go back down though. It looks like Tyro Estrada has been moved to a short side platoon role now. Like, I don't know what the hell the Giants are doing at any point in time. It's like you could have a full-time job trying to keep track of their fucking lineup. So he's someone in daily moves you can play. I don't think you want him in weekly move leagues though.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, it's so hard to trust the Giants. He's actually been better against righties and lefties this year, which is weird because that's typically is the opposite way, right? He plays kind of all over the place, which helps his case. But the Giants are going to continue to platoon. They're a team that could easily add to that infield, like the infield outside of shortstop and probably first base. Like, they could easily add a third baseman or a second baseman at the trade deadline to try to improve this team and make it a little bit more competitive. I don't know that Wilmer Flores is that interesting moving forward.
The upside isn't enough to really make it worthwhile.
I'm going to let you kind of pitch the next topic because this is the one we kind of prefaced at the beginning of the show about who's the number 1 overall pick. But I want you to kind of say why we're talking about it, kind of, talk about what you tweeted out.
Yeah. So I tweeted out maybe a week ago, basically that I think that in 2023, Shohei Ohtani should be the number 1 overall pick for 2023 in general. And I'm talking about leagues. Okay. So to be fair, any daily move leagues where he's one player as both a hitter and a pitcher, where you can use him as either, he's like the clear number 1. And
there's no question.
In best ball, he's the clear number 1. Like, these aren't really arguable points. Apparently in Fantrax, and I don't have confirmation of this, but someone told me this, but in Fantrax draft and hold leagues, so I do know that you can make midweek pitcher changes in those leagues. So you can change out your pitchers from Monday through Thursday for Friday through Sunday. So what they told me is you can actually use Ohtani as a hitter for the half of the week where he does not have a start, and then move him to pitcher for the second half of the week to get his start then, which is absolutely absurd and kind of angers me that you can do that because that's just unfair.
Why?
I mean, because you can't get hitter and pitcher stats both. No other player does that.
They're different scoring periods.
No, what?
It's not like NFBC where it's a week-long scoring period and you can only switch out hitters half the week, they're considering each half of the week their own scoring period.
Yeah, but that's broken. There's no other pitchers that you can play for their start and then move them to being an elite hitter for the other half of the week. Like, that's nuts.
There's no other player like Ohtani. Like, he's broken the game. Like he shouldn't be penalized, and people who draft him shouldn't be penalized.
It's not penalizing him, though. That's too big of a competitive advantage for people. You can't do that. And that's why NFBC will never allow
He's too big of a competitive advantage for the league. He's going to break free agency.
That's different, though. There's no that's you can't compare. People always want to compare like fantasy to real life. They're not the same. They don't have the same rules. Like, if you have a league where one guy is by far the best and you don't have any way to get that number one pick, or to, like, in an auction, people are like, okay, in an auction, if you're going to have that, you can pump up Ohtani's value so much that it makes it difficult to roster the rest of your team around him. So I understand that argument. But in a league where, like Fantrax, where they just assign you a random draft slot, if I don't get the first pick, I'm already at a massive disadvantage than the team picking first. It's not fair.
That happens every year, though. I mean, not every year. There are other years in which there is one clear massive advantage from drafting early.
Not like this, though. Not where you're getting both an ace on the pitching side and a 5-category stud on the hitting side, and you can use them both in the same week. That's ridiculous. You can't do that.
I disagree.
It's a game. No, you can't, with money on the line.
Exactly. It is a game. You play with the constraints the game gives you.
I understand that, but like what Yahoo does, which is
awful. It's absolutely awful, Yahoo.
No, that's how it should be. They have him as a hitter and a pitcher. So you draft.
No, he's not two people.
But that's the only way to fairly do it. You can't do it.
That's the stupid way to do it.
No, that's insane.
He's not two people.
You're giving way too much value to a player where it's not going to be a competitive league now. Now the person who has Ohtani is at such an advantage, and it's a random draw. Like, you just are given the first pick.
Well, then fix that. Fix that. Because that's the real issue. It's not that it's not a random draw in NFBC.
The only way you can, well, it is.
There's
like,
KDS.
Number one overall pick, but doesn't mean I'm going to get it. Yeah, it's KDS. I have some control, but if I don't get picked first, and everybody's going to want Ohtani first in this situation, then you're not going to get him if you're not picked first. I mean, look, thankfully, NFBC and Derek Butcher and Greg and Tom agree with me, because NFBC is never going to do that. They said, like, there's no way you can have thousands of dollars on the line and do that. That's bullshit. You can't do that. You can't have a guy give you both pitching and hitting stats in the same fucking week. That's bullshit.
All right, let's go back to the actual subject at hand, because we're not going to agree on this. So.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I'm saying even so in the premise of this was in like a main event league, like NFBC's main event, where it's one player, but you can only choose for the entire week whether he's going to be a hitter or a pitcher, right? So you can't switch him midweek. So
you have to declare it at the beginning of the week, and you have to declare whether they're going to be a hitter or a pitcher. You still think he is the number one overall player. Give me your argument to why.
My argument is because I have him in leagues, and seeing that versatility where you can move him from either being a pitcher to a hitter, or a hitter to a pitcher in any given week, depending on your lineup's needs, which are fluid throughout the season, is invaluable. Like, you cannot put a value on it. And I see people, people who I respect and who have like, they always want to put numbers on things. And so they'll slap a number on the volatility of that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to be right back. I got something in my throat.
No problem.
Go ahead and talk. I'll be back in a couple, like 30 seconds.
Dave's argument is that because because Ohtani gives you such flexibility for your own individual team, right? That he can be a hitter one week when you really need hitting, or a pitcher one week when you really, really need pitching, that it outweighs the statistical argument that was put against him. And I'll let him kind of break down some of the arguments against it, because I wasn't completely following the thread while I was going. it got pretty heated over on Twitter. And maybe I can have Dave send me one of the tweets so I can link it into the show notes if you want to go through and read it. But I know that one of the arguments was Ohtani, because of their 6-man rotation, never gets a 2-start week. And that limits his upside. And you don't get to take both, right? You don't get to be a pitcher and a hitter in the same week. And so you're leaving some of the stats on the table. I tend to agree with Dave in theory. However, I don't know that still makes him the number one player. I still think that the number one player overall, and I think that you have to also add in the added injury risk of doing two things. I just don't know that long-term Ohtani can continue to do both things effectively without added injury risk. And so for me, I think he deserves to be in the conversation for the top overall pick, just not the top overall. He's just not going to be my top overall pick next year.
Yeah. And you know, the 2-start argument and the injury argument were good counters to what I'm saying. But I think that some people were acting like it didn't matter when he had one start. Like any week that he has hitting is always better than any week that he has one start. And I just think that that's patently false. Like, if I have a team where I have so many good hitting options, and I have several teams like that this year, where, like, let's say if the hitter that I'm replacing for the week would be like Ramon Laureano for 1 week was my option a couple weeks ago. Like, he was my weakest player that I could have been putting at the utility slot. Still pretty damn good. Or I could replace a mediocre at best and possibly very damaging to my ratios pitcher on the pitching side. Like, then I want to use him as a pitcher that week. Like, I've used him as a pitcher the last couple weeks. And, like, he's an ace. I don't know that people realize this, like, because they're like, well, how come you didn't draft him number one coming into the year? Well, number one, I don't draft someone first unless I have to. Like, if I can get him at 8 instead, I'm going to do that. But B, he was not this level of starting pitcher coming into the year. He was good last year. He was nowhere near what he is now. By rates, he's second behind only Corbin Burns right now in terms of, like, the quality of his pitching. Like, he's that good. So, yes, he doesn't give you those 2-start weeks, but he's still putting up 10, 11 strikeouts in one start. I mean, you're getting value, and people are acting like it's like, but if he does this on the hitting side, I'm like, it doesn't matter, though. You don't know what your team is going to need. Like, I've seen people start their drafts with, like, 5 straight pitchers, and their pitchers get hurt. They suck performance-wise, whatever. Like, things don't always go according to plan. And people are like, but if you drafted this way, then it should be this. It should be, but sometimes it's not. And when things don't go according to plan, having the kind of flexibility where you can switch a guy from being on your hitting side to their pitching side, that's insane. That has so much value. And no matter what any numbers guy, whatever value they slap on it, it's just their, like, estimate. It doesn't mean anything. That value is not something you can put an actual number on, in my opinion. And you just don't know at what points of the season you're going to need that. You know, with COVID, with injuries, you might have your roster set and you're like, okay, I've got my nine pitchers here. And then something happens. And then it's like, well, I don't have any other pitchers on my bench that I want to use. Oh, wait, I can take Ohtani and move him to the pitching side, and I can slide in a pretty good hitter in place of him, because it's all about relative value. Who am I replacing him with as a pitcher? Who would I be replacing him with as a hitter? It's not just straight value on both sides. Even if he's a better hitter than he is pitcher, it's still about the relative value that you're replacing on your roster. And my whole point is, you don't know on a week-to-week basis, because the season is so fluid. You don't know what you're going to need. So for me, he's the guy I want. And hey, if I don't have to take him first overall, God bless. That's great. If I can get him at 4th or 5th or whatever, I will do that all day.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to be able to, because I do think that you're going to still see guys like
J-Rod,
yeah,
Betts, Judge, John Berti.
Yeah. Yeah, Birdie should be up there. Birdie's like single-handedly like keeping Scott in first place in our one of our main event leagues. In the other one, he's just crushing everyone. So that's fine.
I mean, that is he has been a game changer. We picked him up in the main. We were it was a year where our steal situation didn't work out, and usually we're not in that position, but he my God, we are now right in the top couple teams in the league in steals. Like, he is that kind of difference maker. I'm kidding about him obviously being a number one candidate, but there's a lot of guys next year who are in that conversation.
I'm going to add to your argument a little bit. So currently, Shohei Ohtani, just as a pitcher, if you just were using him as a pitcher, would be the 9th ranked pitcher this year. And that's considering he has, in some cases, 20 less innings, 25 less innings than some of the pitchers going ahead of him. 2 of the pitchers going ahead of, or that are ahead of him on the Razzball Player Rater this year are Justin Verlander and Joe Musgrove, both of which have been in 6-man rotations at points this year.
Also, Verlander to him, what's the strikeout differential? Because I know Verlander has him in
I'm sure a lot.
In volume? Really? I mean, his strikeout rate is much less than Ohtani's, though.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about in sheer numbers, Verlander has 22 more innings.
Yeah. I'm saying the strikeout rate is probably still pretty close.
The rate or the raw numbers?
The raw numbers, because the rate is so much higher for Ohtani. It's like he gets 4 strikeouts more per 9 than Verlander. So
Verlander currently has 98 strikeouts to and of course I have to sort by pitching for Ohtani. Ohtani has 111 strikeouts. Wow, he's got more strikeouts than Verlander, and it's not even particularly close. Well done, man.
See? That's what I'm saying. And Verlander's getting lucky as hell right now. Like Ohtani's the better play than Verlander. If I'm playing straight up for pitching points, I'd take Ohtani over Verlander 8 days a week. So I mean, he's getting the strikeouts and the underlying stats are better. So
I mean, to be honest, like I think you have a very strong argument right now. I think that you can easily say that Ohtani should be the number 1 overall pick. I don't know that I'm going to take him there because I think it's so difficult to choose week to week, between the two. Obviously, like you said at the beginning, if you're playing in a league where he can be moved in daily moves leagues, to different, or if it is like a fan track draft and hold where you can change midweek, like he's easily the best ball. He's easily the number 1 overall player. Like,
and if you move 5-man rotation, then like most of this argument was against Phil Dussault, but then a lot of other people jumped in too.
They're not going to though.
What?
The Angels will not move to. They will put you in the rotation before they move to a 5-man rotation. Like they literally will. They'll pull a fan out of the stands to be that 6-man in the rotation because they're trying to protect him.
You mean next year and every year, future years?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, maybe not like, his contract is done with the Angels, I think, after next year. Like maybe when he goes to a new team, there's a conversation that happens where he's like, hey, I want to pitch every 5 days. Then he becomes pretty easily, I think, the number 1 player in fantasy.
And Phil admitted that too. He's saying like he thinks that the 6-man rotation is what keeps him from being worth that. I think
you have an argument that he is the number 1 player next year because, and I do want to double check to make sure that I'm right that he is a free agent.
I do want to say though, if he goes to a 5-man rotation, another point that someone else brought up as a counterpoint was we don't know that he can handle that. So in terms of,
I mean, how do we don't know that any pitcher can handle anything. Like I mean, a pitcher can be broken at any time. Like you can't. Sure. I think unless a guy has an actual injury issue coming into the season, or there is a reason to believe he will get injured. Like, I think that's just throwing darts.
Like he has a history with elbow injuries, and the good thing is, even when he had Tommy John, he was still able to hit and at a high level.
Yeah. So there's a Tommy John honeymoon period. Typically, players, after their first 3 to 4 years after getting Tommy John, they're much less likely to get a second one. Now, after that period is up, it goes up exponentially that they could get another one. But like he's in that period. So he is a free agent after next season. So I think there's an added argument that if the Angels are going to continue to be mediocre or suck, and there is talk that they may not be able to re-sign him long term because he wants something equivalent of Max Scherzer's annual value over the course of a very long contract, that they could trade him to another organization that might be willing to put him in a 5-man rotation. So I think there are some avenues to where you are correct. Like I said, I don't know that I'm willing to make that.
Though, because the argument was assuming he stays in a 6-man rotation. That was the.
I still think you have a strong argument. I don't know that.
So too.
I don't know that it's the way I want to build my team, but
it's just that flexibility, man. Like it's so. I don't think people are thinking about like in real time how valuable that is, because like you always think like, okay, I'm going to build my team around him as a hitter. Okay. But things happen. Shit happens. You lose pitchers, and all of a sudden now I need to move him to the pitching side, and I can do that. Whereas otherwise, like I might be out of it in one league that I have him in, if not for being able to use him as a starter, because like my ace got hurt or sucked or whatever. Like it's such a huge boon to be able to do that, and that's something that no other player can offer. J-Rod can steal 40 bases and hit 30 homers, and that's massive, but that's still just hitting. If your pitching sucks, you can't win the overall with J-Rod. So that's the whole thing for me.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and I don't necessarily, in theory, disagree with it. It'll be interesting because this is a conversation we're going to continue to have coming into next year, because there are a lot of different guys. I think next year is going to be a fun year to have the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th pick.
Yeah, like I said,
there's so many guys.
Yeah, I mean, and I didn't even name any pitchers other than Ohtani. I mean, you got Burns, you got Cole. I mean, you still got
Tatis is going to get back healthy at some point.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he's going to, until he has the shoulder surgery, I'm not really going to be drafting Tatis, I don't think.
Well, I know, but I mean, if he comes back, let's say at the beginning of August, and he goes 15-15 or 20-20 rest of the way, like just has an absurd
end
of the season
surgery. So
I'm not saying you.
Okay.
I'm saying the general public. If he comes back and goes bonkers, he's back in that conversation with the general public.
Sure, with the general public, he will be. I will not be interested.
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, for you, yeah, you may not be. Like, there are going to be guys that everybody's out on, right? Like, I'll likely be out on Aaron Judge as a top tier first round pick next year.
Yeah, he's got 7 steals, by the way. Did you see that?
Yeah, well, he's always a guy who steals like 8 to 12. It just he's been injured, so much that he hasn't run. So,
has he actually stolen the ball before? I didn't know that.
I know he's stolen like 9 or 10 before. I'll double check.
First year he stole 9, but with 7 at the halfway point, he could be on his way to 12 this year.
Yeah, I mean, he stole 6 in 112 games, in 2018. But
he's on his way to there's difference between 6 or 7 and 12 or 13, something like that.
But stolen bases are always relative, right? They're relative to team context or relative to a guy's health. Like anytime, like there are plenty of guys in the look at Jonathan Schoop, right? Jonathan Schoop hadn't stolen 5 bases in a season his entire career. He's already got 5 this year. Like
it seems
like stolen base, they're definitely on the rise. Jason did an article on RotoWire about that. But like stolen bases are always first and foremost up to the player, and then second up to the team. And so they can change drastically year to year. It's why they can be so frustrating. All right, let's actually Sean or Woody, our good bud Woody, asked if you were doing a draft tomorrow, who would be your top 5? Ohtani, right?
Yeah, I would go with Ohtani 1. Who are you going with at 1?
I think I gotta go Acuna 1.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
the lack of power here doesn't scare you.
I'm not super worried about it.
Okay.
Maybe no. Actually, you know what? I'm going Turner 1. Turner 1.
Okay. That's a good one.
Turner 1. 2 is probably cut. I really want to take J-Rod. It seems like an absolute trap, but what he is doing right now is absolutely amazing.
Well, here's the thing. I always look at it as what's the downside, right? Like, so could it be a trap? Maybe, but the guy produces in every category. So
yeah,
like,
and massively in every category.
He's still going to give you the steals. Even if the steals aren't there, he's probably still going to give you the homers. So like, unless everything just falls away, like he forgets how to hit. I mean, he does have a higher K rate than most of the guys that we'd be discussing here. But I don't think I think the downside is still a first rounder, even if he's not, number 1 overall caliber. So I think that it's fine to have him up there. I think Trea being second base shortstop eligible gives him a bit of a leg up.
He won't be. Will he be second base next year? I don't think he will be.
Second or I always forget. What is he actually playing right now?
I believe he's playing short because there's no Corey Seager. He has only played shortstop. He's not going to be second base eligible.
Okay, so all right, so shortstop.
But I mean, we're talking about a guy who is pretty much on pace for a 2030 season at this point with a 300 batting average. I'm banking that.
I've been on him for several years as an overall player, so you're not going to get a big argument from me after Ohtani on Trea Turner, so that's fine. I would say, yeah, for me, Trea is probably 2. And then like JRam and J-Rod I think they're all kind of close.
I think Betts is in that mix as well. But like, again, this is going to be, I think for me, it's going to be give me pick 11 or something like that, or give me pick 9. And I'm just going to take whoever out of this, group drops. Like, I probably will not want to drop a draft in the top 5.
Maybe. Yeah, it depends on who comes back in the second round, and it depends on where I have to go to get Ohtani. That's probably where you're going to find me.
Yeah. But I think, like I said, Ohtani probably belongs in that top 5. I think you're going to get a lot of pushback from people who run the numbers the way that Phil did. I think Rudy was a part of that conversation too. And I think you're also going to get pushback from people who just do not want to draft a DH at the beginning of their draft.
Yeah, and I think the part of their problem is that they're only seeing him as a DH because they're devaluing the number of starts too much, in my opinion. So, and I say this respectfully, like these guys are brilliant people. Phil's one of the best players in the world. Was the best player in the world for sure last year. Rudy does wonderful work with Razzball with their Streaminator tools and all that stuff. But I think because they look at things so number oriented and they throw numbers on things that help, but they're not always, just like this is not correct necessarily. It's just what they think it is about, like they're estimating, and that's fine to do that. But I don't think they're really capturing Ohtani's full value, in my opinion, with how they do it. Okay, so we'll say for Woody's sake, we'll say Ohtani, J-Rod, Trea, Acuna, and then you're gonna say Betts. I'm gonna say JRam is my 5th.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Turner, JRam, J-Rod, Acuna.
Oh, do you not have Ohtani in your top 5? Okay.
No, I think Ohtani's got to be in your top 5. I agree with you. I think the flexibility, the ability to add to your pitching or add to your hitting with one roster spot. Because, I mean, not only are you able to move him freely, that frees you up another roster spot to help that other area that you're not using him at, or to even bolster more. I think he's a top 5 guy. You know what? He's 4 for me right now. I'm going to go Turner, JRam, J-Rod, Ohtani, Acuna right now. That's my top 5.
I was going to say, you just made me think of something else too. So let's say like in Fab, there's no streaming starters that you want to stream that week. So you're either left with a really, really bad option that could blow up your ratios. And that's the thing. protecting that ERA and WHIP is so important because when those get out of control, you really it could take months to fix them if you can even fix them at all. And so avoiding that, having to stream bad starters by having the ability to flip Ohtani to being a pitcher for the week, especially because there's often so many good options on the wire that you can add for hitters that there just aren't for pitchers. And the higher up money leagues that you go in NFBC, the more you see people just stashing any mediocre pitcher is stashed. Like there's nobody to.
And the beauty of Ohtani is you don't have to use him for his bad starts. Obviously you can't predict how every start's going to go, but you don't have to use him when he goes to Houston. You don't have to use him when he goes to Coors or to the Dodgers or wherever. He can just be a hitter that week. But he also has some really bad offenses in Texas, the Angels on his Texas and Oakland in his division. And Seattle's been pretty awful at times. I know they're playing better right now, but Seattle was pretty bad for majority of the first half of the year. There's some really good opportunities to really use him as a targeted streamer. I mean, I'm talking myself up to number one. I don't know that I'm going to get there, but
I'm not for instance, this week he had a 5-game week, and I chose I didn't like my pitching options as much as I like my hitting options, so I flipped him to pitchers, even though he's facing Houston. I'm not afraid of that. It's not going to be like him facing Oakland, but he's going to be really good. He's like I said, he's a top 2 starting pitcher in terms of his rates right now. So, those guys, you don't care who they're facing. You just put them in.
Yeah. Do we have an Earth update?
We do. A couple of things. So, number one, Glarf still on top, of course. And for as long as Glarf has been on top, it feels like Ray Butler has also still been on top of the individual side. Barf still sucks.
It does.
I don't know what's going on, but you guys just keep going. I keep thinking regression's going to hit, and you guys are going to start to turn up a bit and kind of come towards the middle, and instead you guys just keep getting further and further behind. I think you're now 1,000 points behind us. I'm like, holy shit. The next worst is 665 points behind us, and that's Darf. So you guys are 335 points behind the second last.
I mean, I've literally lost every pitcher I drafted this year. So I finally get Chris Sale back this week.
But it's a zero-sum thing. The rest of your league can be picking up guys. If you're suffering, how is the rest of your league not doing that well? Other than Sammy Reed, who's in third place and trying to carry Barf on his back, but he just can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some guys who are pretty good, but I think the bottom half of the league, it's been injuries, but we've got a few guys who probably are going to need to get replaced next year. But it is what it is. We are rooting Sammy on to win the overall individually. Okay. And then
and then we do have Slarf. I want to mention Slarf is all the way up to second now. That's the St. Louis area Roto Fantasy League. Nathan Grimm is up to 9th overall. And we got Derek Rhodes at 10th, both from Slarf. So they're kind of helping move the chains a little bit for them. So they passed Tarf and moved into second place this week. So everyone's playing for second behind Glarf. We're enjoying it so far. It'd be nice to get Barf going though.
Any Dr. Dave updates?
No. I believe we asked a couple people when we were on one of Fish's Zoom call if any of them were.
Who were we asking? I was not on the Zoom call.
Jason DuPont was there.
Love Jason. Good dude.
Yeah, good dude. Great high stakes player. He's a huge Boston fan. Huge Boston fan. One of my favorite people that I've ever had on a podcast on High Stakes Heat. He was probably my favorite guest of all time. He was awesome. And then we had Anthony Gialdi.
Nice.
He said no, it was not him.
Oh! Shout out to Anthony Gialdi. We asked for reviews. And Anthony Gialdi came through.
Man.
So I want to give him a massive shout out. First of all, why don't we start by saying you can follow him on Twitter at Eovaldi. That is Gialde. A fantastic NFBC player, a fantastic guy who's really fun to hang out with at Vegas during the main events and everything that was going on. Gave us a 5-star review, so definitely wanted to follow up and kind of thank him for that. Anyone else who wants to give us a 5-star review, we'll give you a shout out. And if we know your Twitter handle, we'll give that a shout out as well. It really helps us out. That was the only 5-star review we've gotten so far since we asked. But again, another shout out to Richard Sands, who's just the man as well.
Yeah, Anthony is a great guy, and Richard both. So yeah, he was on the call. Ryan Venancio was on the call, who's also doing really well in Earth, by the way. Ryan is somewhere in the top 10. I forget where, but
Ryan has got a really good podcast. I highly recommend you follow him on Twitter as well. So
he's a drummer. He's a great drummer. He posts a lot of that stuff on Twitter as well. But yeah, and Zach, of course, and Fish were both on the call. So I don't know. It came up because Eovaldi is just like obsessed with the Dr. Dave phenomenon. So he's just like I think his name on the webcam was like, "Who is Dr. Dave?" or something like that. And so it's like, yeah. So no one has fessed up to it. And like I said, at this point, I think it's kind of moot. Like I don't know that people really care at this point, other than you and I.
We will ask the question until this podcast is retired. Who Dr. Dave is? Dave, remind everybody where you can reach on Twitter, and then plug anything you got going on.
Yeah, you can reach me at RunDMcD on Twitter, and if you want to come and have any friendly discussions about anything fantasy baseball related, always welcome. As always, I'm still just trying to coax Jake out of his routine of not doing the podcasts. So I'm gonna tell him and Tony to get into Podapalooza while I'm gone. So
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have them both. To have them just reach out to me. I think Jake should have the email because he's in TGFBI, but I don't know. Tony probably doesn't.
I'll make a DM with the 4 of us, and I'll be like, hey, you need to be on this. So
perfect. You can reach me on Twitter at Justin Mason FWFB. You can reach Friends of Fantasy Benefits at Twitter on Twitter at Fantasy Benefits. I write daily over at Fangraphs. I'm also on the Sleeper and the Bus podcast and TGFBI podcast. Podapalooza, that's the big thing, man. In 2 weeks' time, on the 23rd and 24th, we are going to have a 2-day, all-day live streams. There's going to be a ton of guests. I just checked the sheet. Todd Zola just signed up to be on. So Lord Zola going to be there as well. If you want to donate, you can donate via PayPal, justinmasonfantasy@gmail.com, or at Justin Salinger via Venmo. Every dollar you donate gets you a raffle ticket to win amazing prizes. I'll even look at some of the already offered prizes. We got a RotoWare t-shirt. We have a Fantasy Alarm t-shirt, a year subscription to Pitcher List Plus, a 7-inch Snoop Dogg Corona bobblehead.
What?
Yeah. We have a subscription to drroto.com, a subscription to SP Streamer, some Razzball shirts, free subscription to the 50 grade tier of the Toolshed podcast Patreon, a coffee mug or t-shirt from Triple Play Fantasy, a guest appearance on the Baseball HQ Radio podcast. That one's pretty cool.
Wait, what was that?
You get to be a guest. You get to do a guest appearance on Baseball HQ Radio.
Oh,
that's a pretty cool one. A Masters Ball subscription, some a reliever recon subscription or merch. There's going to be some really cool prizes. Plus, for every $1,000 we raise, I'm going to add a giveaway spot for TGFBI next year. So last year we raised $8,000. I was able to put 8 people into TGFBI from Podapalooza last year. We're going to keep that going, try to raise as much money. If you are If you want to donate, again, PayPal, justinmasonfantasy@gmail.com, Venmo @Justin Salinger. And if you want to be a part, if you're in the industry and you want to be a part of Potapalooza and you did not get an email from me already, just jump into my DMs or email me at justinmasonfantasy@gmail.com, and I will send you over the sign-up info. But you can watch it on Twitch, YouTube. It'll be live streaming on Twitter. I'll talk to Paul and see if I can live stream it on the Fangraphs website as well. That is going to wrap us up. For Dave and myself, thank you for listening. A fantastic baseball season.